Hey, we want to welcome you to another episode of the 938 podcast. And today we're coming to you with a little bit different format through Zoom. And we've got John Haley joining us today here on the podcast. And we are excited to have him with us. We'll say before we get into talking with him, if you have not, click like and subscribe on the podcast. We want to encourage you to do that. And remember, we're on YouTube and we're also on Spotify. Just want to encourage you to check us out in both locations. And John Haley, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, and glad I could be a part and jump on to the 938 podcast.
Yeah, so it's been a little bit since you've been on. You were on, I know, back in the spring when we were kicking things off for the Project 938.
Yeah.
And so, tell you what, why don't you just give everybody a little bit of an update on how things are going down at Hallmark Baptist Church in Fort Worth.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Again, excited to jump on here again and be a part of this podcast. And we're excited this Sunday because at Hallmark, we get to host John Connerup. And so he's going to be speaking for us as, again, we're kicking off this 938 project. God's been blessing at Hallmark. And I've been watching all of your church's Facebook and missionaries, what God is doing all over the world. We got to see 9 people baptized Sunday night. And so that was awesome. We're excited, praising the Lord for just his continued work in a Hallmark.
Yeah, that's great. And to hear about 9 people getting baptized, that's really awesome to hear. You know, I think back, I saw a Facebook post a couple weeks ago from your brother, and they had a bunch of people saved and baptized.
Yeah, I think they had 19 2 Sundays ago, 19 people baptized. It was awesome.
And that was great to see and hear that. And so it's just great to see how God's blessing all over the country, not just the country, but the world as well.
Right,
and,
for sure.
So let's go back a little bit. Last week was Missions Morning at the September National Meeting there at Antioch Bible Baptist Church in Gladstone, Missouri. And we had a great national meeting all the way around. I know for me, I got to connect with people that I haven't got to connect with in a while, and it was great to visit. And part of the national meeting for me, I enjoy just going and hanging out with people and talking with people and engaging, just the whole fellowship scene and getting to hang out with them. And then we got to eat some good barbecue as well. But we made it
too much barbecue. I ate too much barbecue.
Yeah, I think all of us ate way too much barbecue. And the crazy thing is, as much as we ate, they were still piling it up and taking it out to take with them. So, but a great meeting. But then we got to Wednesday morning. And of course, Wednesday morning, I'm a little biased, but that's always my favorite part of the national meetings, because we get to talk about everything that's going on through BBFI missions and update the fellowship on a lot of different things, celebrate the life of missionaries. But this one was a little bit different because we also got to kind of start the final countdown for Project 938, 2021. So let's just kind of start with Missions Morning last week and say, what stood out to you about Missions Morning that was a blessing to you? What was exciting for you to be a part of and see and hear? Just kind of give us some of your reactions to Missions Morning from last week.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just kind of echo what you already said. The church, man, they were amazing hosts. Everyone that spoke did a great job. It was just an encouragement. Not only was it an encouragement, I was challenged by those who spoke, and it was just great. And then I feel like there has been over the last year or two, maybe, of course, I know everything's a little different with the last 18 months, but it seems like a little bit of shift. I've always thought Wednesday Missions Morning is the best day of fellowship week or a national meeting. And but it seems like that's always been kind of less attended. And maybe you would agree with me. I feel like that is shifting back. And man, there was a great crowd Wednesday. And I think people are starting to realize, wow, this is an encouraging, it's an exciting, it's a challenging morning to come to. And this one was no different. I was thoroughly blessed. I was challenged. I was encouraged. And part of that was just seeing a lot of people that didn't leave early. In fact, on my flight back to Dallas Wednesday afternoon, I think there were 6 of us on that flight. And what it spoke to me was that they waited till after the mission morning to get their flight. And I'm not sure that was always the case. And so I'm excited about that. At least I feel like there's been a shift. Maybe, I don't know. Do you agree with me? Maybe I put you on the spot here, I guess. But
no, I tell you what, it's been great because the last couple of years we've had some good crowds and stuff for Missions Morning, and it really speaks, I think, to the momentum that's being being kind of played out through our fellowship with
Right.
missions, what's going on. And, we come to this year in Project 938, and it was a whole nother animal, right? So this is
Right.
a whole other level of things that we've been able to put together for the fellowship. And that's given a lot of momentum just across the board, with people getting behind kind of a unified approach
Right.
to praying a single prayer that Jesus asked us to pray about. And so, I think we saw some results from that even at the September meeting. And it's great to see people jumping on board, getting engaged in that project. And we're excited about that. I love Mission Morning for a lot of reasons. Talk to me about the ones that were honored. I
Yeah.
know you
So,
about that earlier before
yeah.
we podcast, but tell me kind of what hits your mind when you walk in and you see a globe and you see those 30-year awards now that are on those tables, and just kind of the anticipation that builds.
Well, it's interesting because as I think about the numbers, 30 years ago, I graduated from high school 30 years ago. This is my 30th anniversary. And so, wow, I think, man, I'm old. And then I also think the 50-year globe, I'm 48. And so those two 30-year and 50-year mark, like, I guess in the stage of life I'm at right now, it kind of speaks to the reality of some things. But when I thought like the bowls, 30 years in Zambia, what a testimony, what faithfulness. I think we heard even this past week that the average missionary stays on the field. And I think this is across all platforms, not just speaking of the BBF, is 8 years.
Yeah.
And here you have the Bowls in Zambia, the Dotsons in Tanzania, and the Solomons in Chile, three couples in one organization that have, almost 4 times the average have been faithful. And, from what I see in them and as I spoke to them, is like that it's not like, I mean, they're headed to the 50-year globe. That's, kind of like their faithfulness and their dedication. And so when I see families like that have dedicated 30 years of their life into another culture, but faithful and spreading the gospel and sharing Christ, it's encouraging, it's challenging, and it's exciting. I congratulate them, I honor them, and I'm thankful that our organization and the missions office does a great job celebrating them. And then of course, we also got to celebrate the Garners, 50 years
Years
in
in Mexico.
Mexico, 50 years. And of course, as I talked to them after their award, and I was just spent a moment congratulating them. And I can remember them as a boy. My dad graduated from Baptist Bible College with the Garners. And so I'm 48 now. And pretty much the whole ministry, from a childhood up, I've watched and observed from a distance. And it just, man, I love seeing people running the race well. And
Yeah.
I think our missionaries do it better than anyone. And so it was just awesome. I love doing that.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a couple of things that I loved specifically about this one. And I always have things that I love about these mission mornings and things.
Right.
But when I think about like the Solomons, right? We also saw their kids, right?
Yeah.
Be basically recognized into the intern missionary program to go beyond there. So you got another generation of missionaries following in their footsteps, going to the mission field. And then, a longtime friend of mine is Bruce Garner. I actually worked for Bruce's father-in-law as one of my our first youth pastor position down in Odessa.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So I've known Bruce and Charisse and the family for 20 years, for a long time. And to see them as missionaries in Mexico and then transitioning out to where they're at, and to see these missionaries that have been on the field for so long, and then generations that are following them are in ministry and they're faithfully telling people about Jesus. It's just really good. And then getting to connect with Bruce at this meeting and hear his heart for his parents, and it's just a lot of great stuff when we talk about these missionaries. I go back to something you said a few minutes ago. The average across all organizations, mission organizations, is like 8 years, right? But for the BBFI missionaries, you go back and look at the entire history of the BBFI, and it's close to like 26 years or
Wow.
over. So to see that we've had missionaries that go to the field, stay on the field, and reach people, and every time I'm reminded of all these missionaries over the years that I've known and that have been a part of the BBFI. And you can just remember one after another that you can go back and you think, man, they got their 30-year award last year and
Right.
50 last year. And the stories just continue to go. And so it's really cool to have so many great stories of God using ordinary people
Right.
that are just willing to say, here I am, Lord, send me. So
Well, and I think I'm curious, and I know this is maybe a little off topic, but what you said kind of spurred a thought or a question, and that is like, uh, why would you think? I have my own maybe theories, as you just mentioned it, that the BBFI is like 3 times the longevity. What would be, maybe, I don't know, I'm asking you a deep question or a thought, but
yeah, you're asking me,
uh,
yeah, you're putting me on the spot for that one.
well, I guess my initial reaction was I think it has to do with the relationships, because they're partnering with local churches. They're not just sent out by, whatever, but they're sent out by a local church. They also have a great connection to the missions office and a great staff that connects with them and supports them. And so I don't know, that was my top of my head thoughts of why God has blessed our BBF missionaries so much and allowed them to stay so long.
I think another part of this too is for our entire existence, missions has been the heartbeat of what we do, right?
True.
And
Right.
it's, a lot of other organizations, it's part of what they do, but it's not basically it's not the
Who they
driving
are. Right.
who they are. And so I think there's a lot of factors that play into it like that. I was actually teaching at BBC for Professor Dunning a few weeks back, and we were talking about deputation, right? And so we were talking about the importance of missionaries being on deputation. And then I asked him a question, basically, what would happen to the BBFI if we had no missionaries going on deputation to raise support? A lot of people that we know now, a lot of conversations I have is we want to go to an organization that's going to pay us to get us there, and then we'll work for
Right.
that organization to do that. But then the question becomes, from a local church level, what does that look like? Part of the missionary journey is building and pushing missions in churches and encouraging people and challenging people to consider missions with their life. And so I think that speaks to another thing that sets us apart, maybe a little bit different from other organizations, is we have a network of churches that these missionaries are in all the time. And I think just because of that alone, those relationships, go back to what you said,
Right.
all those that are built that other missionaries from other organizations may not have.
Right.
And I think back on deputation, and I think about the classes that I get to teach some at BBC, and I think about one of the big talking points is you're not just raising missionary support, you're also raising a group of backers in prayer.
Right. Yeah.
And I think having that aspect is a huge part of what happens. That basically we understand that prayer changes things and prayer sustains. And I think God hears and answers those prayers, and He's blessed our missionaries for years. So
Yeah, I think, and this is just again, maybe I'm off topic, but made me think of, we have a lady in our church who's 91 years old, and her son was a BBFI missionary for many years in the Philippines, Terry Weesey. And Pansy, a few years ago, her husband died, I think about 5 years ago, and I remember her telling me one of her biggest worries or fears, I'm not sure, is Carl had made all of these commitments to missionaries through Hallmark. Like, we want to give, and they gave sacrificially. And she told me that several years ago. And recently she said, John, God has been faithful, and I've been able to meet every one of Carl's commitments. And I think
that's awesome.
And so with that is prayer. She is
Yeah.
praying for those missionaries. She's communicating. And so I think you're right. I think the connection, the relationship, and the building, not just a base of financial support, but a base of personal relationships and prayer support. And so again, I know I steered us off topic. So sorry, we get back on topic, but.
Well, no, you're good, because that leads us kind of into this whole Project 938, right? Because I mean, when you think about our churches and missionaries going and talking about missions and preaching missions and talking about the Great Commission and the importance of surrendering our life, I mean, that all feeds back into why and how God has used our movement, right?
Right.
Because missionaries are there and they're in churches and they're preaching the gospel and
Right.
they're talking about the Great Commission. And then God uses that to call people to the mission field. I mean, how many times have we heard lately? And I know we talk about this some, but when I was on a mission trip with missionaries, you know,
Right.
we
Hmm.
had a mission conference and these missionaries stopped by and they were telling their story. Or, when I was little, we had this missionary family talk in junior church or whatever. Those are the times that it seems like here lately, especially, and even longer. I mean, for the last however long you want to go back,
Right.
that's seems like God has used our missionaries and the messages that have been preached and the testimonies to lay on people's hearts. Hey, maybe God's calling me. And so, and with that in mind, you think about this whole Project 938, right? So we come out of the missions morning last week in Kansas City, and it's kind of the last countdown because this coming Sunday is 938 Sunday,
Right.
and we're excited about that. But that is all centered around Matthew 938. We know this. Pray the Lord of the harvest that He would send forth laborers into the harvest. And so we're praying that God would continue to call more missionaries so we can
Right.
have more out among our churches and more missionaries going to the mission field to start churches, right?
Right.
So give us some of your thoughts on. I mean, you've seen this entire process work itself out. You were on the podcast on those first few episodes when we were really getting things kicked off. So
Right.
now that you've kind of seen the whole process up to this point before 938 Sunday, what do you think about this Project 938, and what would you tell pastors that might be watching today about this coming Sunday?
Right. Well, I think anytime that we can focus our church on any topic or theme in prayer, we can't go wrong, because God has always commissioned us to pray. And so, and now this is not only just a challenge to pray, but we're praying specifically the prayer of Jesus, that
Yeah,
He would send forth more laborers. And so, when we match in our prayers, match the heart of God and the will of God,
yeah,
well, we're going to see the power of God. And
that's
so
right.
I think, man, how awesome is it that we have a concerted effort? It's something we all want. It's something we desire. But not only that, we know it's what God wants and what God desires.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so when we pray in the will of God, we expect the power of God. And so when I think about generational and I think about prayer and the team and all those things, it made me even think last Wednesday night in our midweek, we showed the Marjorie Browning video.
Yeah,
And
very.
right after that, my aunt, who was a longtime member at a BBF church on the other side of Fort Worth, uh, Marjorie Browning used to come there all the time and visit, and so my aunt would be praying for Marjorie Browning, and so you see that all around the country, what happens when the people of God pray the will of God? We get the power of God, and so man, I'm excited about it. I think I know John and the missions office this is not just a 1 year, let's try it and see what happens. It's like this is a 5 year, I think, commitment. Like let's continue to pray. And what could we see God do in the next 5 years
Yeah,
if churches I know you have the numbers, but there's a lot of churches, and not just in the country, but all over the world that are going to pray this prayer.
yeah.
I think I've had my phone alarm set for a year for 9:38, and it goes off usually when I'm in a meeting of some sorts, and just God, let's pray that you would call more people to work. So I'm excited about it.
I love that. And if you're watching today and you have not done that, man, the 938 challenge is basically this. It's set your alarm at 9:38 in the morning, 9:38 at night. And when that alarm goes off, just simply bow your head and pray and say, God, please continue to call people to the mission field, and pray that people will not just be called, but be willing to surrender their lives to go.
Right.
And that's what this is all about. It's getting our churches and the people of the BBFI to pray for more missionaries. You mentioned that the Marjorie Browning documentary, we got to show that last Wednesday morning at Missions
Yeah.
Morning. And then obviously we've had a ton of great feedback on that. And this is one of the resources that's available in the September pack for all the pastors that might be watching today, wanting to know how they can get access to that. If you've registered, then you have access to that, and that link that you were emailed back when the September pack went out. And then if you haven't registered yet, you still have time. You can still get on today at project938.world, and you can register your church today and get access to all those great resources that are available, including the documentary. But, just obviously we're not going to unpack the entire documentary, but what do you think about this documentary? 30 minutes long, tells about her life, going all the way back to when she was here in Springfield, all the way through to where she passed away, and then even a lot about her legacy and what's still happening today because of Marjorie Browning.
Well, I would say if you're a pastor or a missionary listening and you haven't watched it, register for the 938, just if nothing else, just to get the video, because it will inspire you, and it will inspire and challenge your people. When I think of the story of her willingness to live in a place that most people who are going to watch this podcast would not want to live, live on hardly any money at all. I don't remember, it was $1,200 or something a month. There was something meager in the video that she would send money back. This is too much money. I don't need this much money. And just, her faithfulness, her just willingness to endure. She endured a lot. And then her legacy is that, she was sending out of her own personal funds money back because it was too much, and invested it. I think a relative invested it for her. And now she has left a huge sum of money to help missionaries pay for gas when they go out on deputation and furlough. And I think, I promise if you watch the video, you'll be challenged and you'll be thinking, how committed am I? What am I doing with my finances, and what am I doing with my time? And it's kind of hard not to walk away and think, wow, I'm not a very good Christian. I know that's not the goal, but man, just to pursue.
Yeah, definitely not the goal. So, but you know what? I think there were several things about it that's challenging. First of all, just you go back and we talk about her legacy. That pays for the shipping of new missionaries. First time they go to the field, pays for their shipping, for all of their personal items to go from the U.S. to the country they're going to, and their airline tickets.
Wow.
That is an incredible.
Yeah.
Just blessing to people, and we saw it in the video, because in that documentary, we also hear from missionaries that have been blessed by eating, because they've been on the receiving end of that, and it's really just crazy to see. But I remember you talk about the money that she had and how she sent it back because it was too much. I tell you, one of the most convicting parts of that entire documentary to me personally was when she said, because I think when she went, she had like $200 a month in support. But she said, you know what? We don't even have a lot of stuff down here to buy, even if I had money. And she said, prayer can do so much more than money can. And I tell you what, just that statement alone convicted me of even in my life, just not trusting money more than you trust God. And that's just something that we probably all struggle with. But just to be challenged by that documentary was a huge thing last week when we were watching that at the national meeting. So so now we've got Project 938, 938 Sunday coming up. And as we wrap this podcast up today, is there anything else that you would like to say to those watching today, just about Project 938, Missions Morning, about missions in general? Do you have anything that you'd like to add before we kind of sign off for the day on this episode of the 938?
I was saying, I know we're focusing this next Sunday, October 3rd, on 938 Sunday. And as I already mentioned, John Connor's going to be at our church, and we're excited about that and want to push it. But maybe you're just going to sign up today for Project 938. That doesn't mean you have to do a 938 Sunday this coming Sunday. Plan it for maybe your missions emphasis in March, and you could wrap your whole missions emphasis on just that word, just those letters or numbers, 938, and you could create your whole mission conference on that. Maybe it's not till March, and so maybe you missed out really packaging it and using all the information this coming Sunday, but that doesn't mean you can't do it in the weeks to come. It's going to be another year. We're going to do it again, but Again, if we can get our people to pray in the will of God, we can expect the power of God. And how awesome would it be for members of your church to surrender to the mission field, and for your church to get behind them and send them. And we have the best missions office at HC to help them and support them. And maybe we could trace that back to you remember that day we registered for 938 and God pricked our heart about praying, and look what God has done. So I want to encourage you, let's pray what Jesus prayed, that he would send forth more laborers in the harvest, because and I know more people are lost in the world today than there ever has been in the history of the world. The need is greater, and the responsibility is still there. And so let's pray for God to use us and to call more people. So let me just encourage you, be a part of it on some level, some way, somehow.
Be a part. And one of the ways your people can get involved even afterwards is part of the September pack included a 7-day prayer calendar. And on that prayer calendar, there's a QR code, and that QR code, on each day you pray for a different region of the world. And then on each day, there's a QR code that also takes you to a regional video that talks about the need in that particular region. So you have practical tools like that. There's Bible studies. There's all kinds of things centered around 938. And if you haven't registered yet, I want to encourage you to do so. And then also, if you are hosting 938 Sunday at your church this coming Sunday on October 3rd, and take pictures, take video clips of how things go in your church, and send that to us at the mission office. We would love to be able to report back to the entire fellowship. Tell us, did you have anyone surrender to go to the mission field? Communicate that to us, because we would love to celebrate that as a fellowship together. And want to encourage you to do that as you walk through 938 Sunday. And so I tell you what, one of my prayers just that I have for our fellowship is that every church would become a sending church for a missionary.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
How incredible would it be if this Sunday was the catalyst that propelled all of the churches to catch the vision of saying, hey, what would happen if our church sent someone out? And so just praying for that, praying through that, looking forward to this Sunday. John, thanks for being here with us on the 938 podcast. And it's been great to have you, and looking forward to seeing how God uses this at Hallmark. Excited that Brother Conor is going to be able to be with you guys this coming Sunday for 938 Sunday. And just looking forward to seeing how God uses this across the board, not just stateside, but all over the world. Churches focus on Matthew 9:38 and praying to the Lord of the harvest that he had sent forth more laborers in the harvest. So, John, again, thank you for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to connecting here soon. And if you're you're watching today, thanks for being here and being with us on the 938 podcast. I want to encourage you to go click like and subscribe. And we're here on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Central Time, talking about all things BBFI missions, Project 938, and everything that's going on in the world as it relates to missionaries and the churches of the BBFI. Hope you guys have a great day, and we will see you next week.